This ancient civilization vanished overnight and left no explanation behind. The fires were still burning, not raging out of control, not consuming the city in chaos, just burning quietly beside abandoned homes, as if the people who lit them planned to return a few moments later. Clay bowls filled with food remained untouched on stone tables. Tools rested where workers had dropped them mid-task. Massive temples stood open beneath the night sky, their stairways empty, their sacred chambers silent. Then came the strangest detail of all. There were almost no bodies, no signs of a final battle large enough to erase an empire, no graves explaining a plague, no message carved into stone warning future generations of what had happened here. One day, this civilization controlled enormous cities, commanded trade routes across vast territories, and possessed knowledge so advanced that modern historians still struggle to explain parts of it. Then, suddenly, the heart of their world stopped beating. Imagine walking through an entire city where every sound has vanished. No merchants shouting through crowded markets, no priests chanting inside temples, no children running across narrow stone streets. Only wind moving through abandoned corridors where thousands of people once lived their lives. This was not a forgotten village swallowed by time. This was one of the most sophisticated civilizations on Earth. Its rulers mapped the stars with astonishing precision. Its architects built monuments aligned perfectly with celestial movements. Its engineers created massive urban centers in regions many believed impossible to sustain. At the height of its power, the civilization seemed unstoppable. Powerful kings ruled over enormous populations. Sacred pyramids towered above dense jungles. Entire cities pulsed with trade, ritual, science, and military authority. And yet something happened, something powerful enough to empty entire cities, something terrifying enough to make people abandon temples they had worshipped in for centuries. The deeper archaeologists dig into the ruins, the stranger the mystery becomes. Some cities show signs of violence. Others appear almost untouched, as if their populations simply disappeared into the wilderness. In certain locations, construction projects were abandoned halfway through completion. Massive stone monuments were left unfinished. Royal records suddenly stopped. It was as though history itself had been interrupted. What could force an advanced civilization to vanish so completely that centuries later we are still struggling to understand its final days? Was it drought, war, disease, religious collapse, or something far darker hidden beneath the ruins? Because this is not only the story of an ancient disappearance, it is the story of how an entire world can collapse while believing it is still strong. And the civilization that vanished without explanation was the Maya, the civilization that should have ruled the world. Long before many European kingdoms emerged from chaos and fragmentation, the Maya were already building cities that seemed to challenge the limits of human capability. Deep inside dense tropical jungles, where survival alone should have been nearly impossible, they created towering stone capitals connected by vast trade networks, stretching across enormous distances. Their world was not primitive. It was astonishingly organized, intellectually advanced, and frighteningly sophisticated for its time. The most unsettling part is this: they accomplished much of it without the technologies modern civilization considers essential. No steel tools, no horses, no wheeled transport systems used for construction. Yet somehow, enormous pyramids rose above the jungle canopy with geometric precision that still stuns engineers and archaeologists today. Massive limestone blocks weighing several tons were transported across difficult terrain and stacked into structures designed to align perfectly with astronomical events. During certain equinoxes, shadows slithered down temple stairways with such precision that they created the illusion of a serpent descending from the heavens itself. This was not accidental architecture. This was calculated knowledge. The Maya understood the movement of celestial bodies with extraordinary accuracy. Their astronomers tracked the cycles of Venus so precisely that some of their calculations rivaled later observations made centuries afterward. They developed complex calendar systems capable of measuring immense spans of time, connecting cosmic movements to religion, agriculture, politics, and warfare. For them, the sky was not decoration. It was a living system that governed human destiny, and that knowledge shaped every corner of their civilization. Kings did not simply rule through military power, they ruled through cosmic authority. Massive ceremonies unfolded atop pyramids before thousands of witnesses. Priests interpreted signs in the heavens. Sacred rituals connected rulers to gods believed capable of controlling rain, harvests, life, death, and time itself. Every city became both a political center and a spiritual machine designed to mirror the universe. But beneath the beauty of this civilization existed something even more impressive: scale. The Maya world was enormous. Millions of people lived across a network of independent city-states spread throughout present-day Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. Great urban centers rose from the jungle with plazas large enough to hold thousands of citizens. Roads carved through forests connected distant territories. Merchants carried obsidian, jade, cacao, feathers, salt, and textiles across dangerous routes, linking powerful kingdoms together. This was not a lost tribe hidden in isolation. This was a superpower hidden beneath the trees. And the jungle itself became one of their greatest illusions. For centuries, the dense forests concealed the true scale of Maya civilization from the modern world. Many early explorers believed the ruins they discovered belonged to small ceremonial communities. They were catastrophically wrong. Recent laser scanning technology has revealed something astonishing beneath the jungle canopy. Enormous cities, defensive walls, reservoirs, highways, terraces, pyramids, and interconnected settlements stretching farther than historians ever imagined. The Maya had transformed the landscape itself. Then comes the contradiction that makes their disappearance so disturbing. How does a civilization capable of mastering astronomy, engineering, mathematics, agriculture, architecture, and political organization fail to survive? How does a society advanced enough to map the heavens lose control of events happening on Earth? That question haunts every ruined temple they left behind. Because civilizations this powerful are not supposed to vanish quietly. Empires this intelligent are not supposed to disappear without leaving a clear explanation. Yet somewhere between their magnificent rise and their mysterious collapse, something began to fracture beneath the surface of their world. Something invisible at first, something slow, silent, and deadly. And by the time the Maya realized the danger surrounding them, it may already have been too late. The last normal day. The morning began like countless others before it. As the first light pushed through the thick jungle mist, the city slowly awakened beneath the towering pyramids. Smoke curled upward from cooking fires hidden between crowded stone homes. Merchants prepared goods for the markets. Farmers carried tools toward distant fields beyond the city walls. Priests climbed steep temple stairways in silence, preparing rituals timed precisely to the movements of the heavens above them. Nothing about the day appeared unusual. That is what makes it terrifying. Somewhere inside these enormous cities, ordinary life continued while an entire civilization moved silently toward collapse. Children laughed through narrow plazas carved from stone. Nobles discussed politics beneath painted palace walls. Scribes recorded royal histories using symbols that would survive centuries longer than the people writing them. Warriors guarded entrances and roads connecting neighboring kingdoms. Traders arrived carrying obsidian blades, jade ornaments, cacao, feathers, and stories from distant territories. Life moved with confidence. The Maya had no reason to believe their world stood at the edge of disaster. At the center of the city, massive ceremonial plazas pulsed with movement. Vendors shouted prices across crowded markets filled with woven textiles, pottery, food, tools, and sacred objects. The smell of roasted maize drifted through the air. Drums echoed faintly from temple courtyards. Everywhere there were signs of order, ritual, structure, and continuity. Civilizations do not collapse in a single moment. At first, they look invincible. That illusion may have been strongest during the final years of Maya power. Kings continued commissioning monuments, celebrating victories and divine authority. Architects kept expanding temples higher into the sky. Religious ceremonies remained elaborate and public, reinforcing the belief that cosmic balance still protected the world around them. But hidden beneath the surface, small fractures had already begun spreading through the foundations of their society. The rivers no longer behaved predictably. Harvests had become harder to sustain. Entire regions were facing growing pressure from expanding populations competing for limited resources. Forests surrounding major cities were being consumed faster than nature could recover. Political rivalries intensified between powerful kingdoms struggling to dominate trade routes and territory. Behind ceremonial masks and public rituals, fear may already have been spreading quietly through the ruling elite. Yet ordinary people still woke up each morning believing tomorrow would come. That is the tragedy of collapsing civilizations. Most citizens never realize they are living through the final chapter of their world. Archaeologists studying abandoned Maya cities have discovered evidence suggesting that many places were not destroyed instantly. Some communities appear to have weakened gradually over years or decades, but others show signs of something far more disturbing: abrupt abandonment. Construction projects suddenly stopped. Sacred temples were left unfinished. Homes still contained tools, pottery, and personal belongings. It was as if entire populations walked away from their cities without enough time, or perhaps without enough hope, to return. Imagine standing inside one of those final evenings. The jungle hums in the darkness beyond the city walls. Torches flicker along palace corridors. Priests complete rituals asking the gods for protection. Families eat together, unaware that future generations will search these ruins, asking the same impossible question: what happened here? Because somewhere between these ordinary moments and the silence that followed, the Maya world began slipping into a crisis so devastating that some of its greatest cities would soon be swallowed by the jungle itself. And the first warnings had already begun to appear. The first signs. Something was wrong. At first, the changes were subtle enough to ignore. A delayed rainy season, fields producing slightly smaller harvests, reservoirs dropping lower than usual beneath the burning heat of the dry months. To the average citizen, these may have seemed like temporary hardships, the kind civilizations survive all the time. But for the Maya, water was not simply a resource. Water was survival. Entire cities depended on carefully controlled systems designed to capture and store rainfall in a region where long droughts could transform fertile land into deadly terrain. And slowly, the balance began to break. The skies that once sustained millions became unpredictable. Year after year, drought conditions intensified across parts of the Maya world. Lakes shrank, crops weakened. Famine crept silently through regions already struggling to support massive urban populations. The larger the cities became, the more fragile their survival truly was. What once looked like unstoppable expansion may actually have been pushing the civilization toward collapse from within. But nature alone does not explain the fear that began spreading through these cities. Something else was changing. The political order was becoming unstable. For centuries, Maya kings had ruled through the belief that they maintained harmony between the gods and humanity. Their authority depended not only on military power, but on the perception that they could preserve cosmic balance itself. Good harvests, stable weather, successful wars, and prosperous trade all reinforced that belief. Then the disasters started multiplying. and people began asking dangerous questions. What happens when the gods stop listening? Suddenly, rulers who once appeared divine may have looked powerless. Rival city-states turned increasingly hostile toward one another. Warfare intensified across the region. Ancient inscriptions describe conflicts growing more brutal and frequent during the civilization's final centuries. Captured rulers were humiliated publicly. Alliances collapsed. Entire populations were displaced by violence, spreading between competing kingdoms desperate to maintain control. The frightening part is that these wars were happening while environmental pressure continued growing worse. The Maya were fighting each other during a survival crisis, and history has shown repeatedly what happens to civilizations that begin consuming themselves while resources disappear around them. Then came the signs archaeologists still struggle to fully explain. Certain ceremonial centers appear to have been intentionally damaged. Monuments honoring kings were destroyed in some regions. Sacred buildings that once represented divine authority were abandoned. In several cities, construction suddenly ceased altogether, as though workers vanished in the middle of expansion projects already underway. Something had shattered confidence in the future. But perhaps the most disturbing clue is psychological. Imagine living in a society where every aspect of life revolves around cosmic order, sacred cycles, and divine protection. Then imagine watching drought destroy crops year after year, while wars spread across neighboring territories and rulers fail to stop the suffering. Fear becomes more than fear. It becomes spiritual panic. Some historians believe religious instability may have accelerated the collapse itself. If the gods appeared silent during catastrophe, then the entire structure of Maya authority could begin collapsing alongside public trust. Rituals once meant to unite society may have transformed into desperate attempts to prevent total destruction. And still, the full truth remains hidden, because not every Maya city collapsed at the same speed. Some survived longer than others, some adapted temporarily, some appear to have descended into chaos rapidly, while others faded slowly into abandonment. That contradiction is what keeps this mystery alive centuries later. There was no single moment when the Maya world ended. Instead, it may have experienced something far more terrifying. A slow unraveling powerful enough to make millions realize their civilization was no longer immortal. And soon, entire cities would begin falling silent one after another. The night the civilization died. No historian can tell you the exact night the Maya world truly collapsed. There was no single explosion, no final king standing before burning walls, no surviving witness leaving behind a clear account of the end. That uncertainty is what makes the story so haunting. The collapse did not arrive like a storm visible on the horizon. It spread slowly through the darkness until entire cities found themselves standing at the edge of silence. Then, one by one, the lights went out. Imagine the final nights inside one of the great Maya capitals. The jungle surrounding the city feels heavier than before. The air is dry. Reservoirs once filled with life are dangerously low. Food has become harder to find. Rumors move through crowded streets faster than merchants now do. Travelers arriving from distant territories bring stories of abandoned settlements, failed harvests, violence, and rulers losing control over populations growing desperate. Inside the temples, priests continue their ceremonies beneath torchlight. They have to. If the rituals stop, fear wins completely. Drums echo through ceremonial plazas while smoke rises into the night sky. Sacred chants climb the stone pyramids toward gods that no longer seem willing to answer. Thousands gather below, hoping for reassurance, for a sign that order can still be restored. But beneath the sound of ritual, something else is spreading. Panic. Not loud panic at first. Quiet panic. The kind that grows when people begin noticing neighbors disappearing. The kind that spreads when markets no longer overflow with food. When trade routes become dangerous. when exhausted soldiers return from conflicts with nothing to celebrate, when entire families begin leaving cities under cover of darkness, searching for safer land somewhere beyond the jungle. And then comes the moment civilizations fear most, the realization that no one is truly in control anymore. Archaeological evidence suggests that some Maya cities experienced rapid abandonment during their final stages. Public monuments stopped appearing. Royal inscriptions ended abruptly. Construction projects froze in time. Massive ceremonial centers that once held thousands of people became strangely empty. In certain locations, elite palaces were left exposed to the elements, as though the people who ruled there vanished before securing anything behind them. It feels almost impossible. Cities that survived for centuries simply stopped functioning. Imagine walking through those streets during the final days. Torches flicker beside abandoned homes. Stone corridors echo with footsteps that seem unnaturally loud in the growing silence. Doors remain open. Cooking fires burn unattended. Animals wander through plazas where crowds once gathered beneath towering pyramids. And above it all, the jungle waits patiently at the edges of the city, ready to reclaim everything. That may be the most terrifying image of all. Not destruction through fire or invasion, erasure through silence. Because the jungle did not conquer the Maya overnight. It simply moved back into spaces humans could no longer defend. Trees cracked apart stone temples, roots swallowed stairways, vines crawled across palaces where kings once ruled with divine authority. Over time, entire cities disappeared beneath thick forests so completely that centuries later, explorers could walk nearby without realizing vast ruins slept beneath their feet. It was as though the earth itself erased them. But even now, the mystery deepens. Some cities show signs of warfare, others do not. Some populations appear to have fled gradually, others vanished rapidly enough to leave possessions behind. There is no single explanation that fully accounts for what happened across the Maya world. Only fragments, only clues, only silence. And buried beneath that silence, archaeologists would later uncover evidence suggesting the Maya left behind far more than ruins. They left behind warnings, the clues they left behind. For centuries, the jungle protected the Maya's final secrets. Trees rose through palace floors. Thick roots split apart pyramids stone by stone. Entire cities vanished beneath layers of vegetation so dense that explorers could pass within meters of massive structures without seeing them. It was almost as if nature itself had sealed the ruins away from the world. But the silence never fully erased the evidence. The deeper archaeologists began digging into abandoned Maya cities, the more unsettling the discoveries became. Every temple, broken monument, buried tunnel, and shattered inscription felt less like the remains of a lost civilization and more like fragments from an unsolved crime scene frozen in time. Some of the clues were obvious, others were deeply disturbing. In several cities, archaeologists discovered construction projects abruptly abandoned midway through completion. Staircases stopped unfinished, temples remained partially built, stone blocks lay where workers had apparently left them centuries earlier. Civilizations do not abandon monumental projects unless something powerful interrupts the system supporting them. Then came the royal records, or rather the sudden absence of them. For generations, Maya rulers filled their cities with carved monuments celebrating wars, victories, dynasties, rituals, and divine authority. These inscriptions were political weapons designed to project strength and permanence. Then, in many regions, they stopped almost entirely. Entire dynasties seemed to vanish from the historical record. Kings who once documented every triumph suddenly disappeared into silence. Why? What could make rulers obsessed with immortalizing themselves stop recording history altogether? The clues become even stranger inside residential areas. Archaeologists uncovered homes containing everyday objects still left behind. pottery, tools, personal items, even food preparation equipment. In some locations, valuables remained untouched. This creates a terrifying possibility. Certain populations may not have left their cities through organized migration alone. Some departures appear rushed, chaotic, or emotionally desperate. Then there are the signs of violence. Skeletons bearing evidence of trauma have been found in several Maya regions. Fortifications and defensive walls increased dramatically during the civilization's later periods, suggesting growing fear of conflict. Some cities reveal evidence of internal destruction, as though violence erupted from within rather than arriving from outside invaders. But even warfare fails to explain everything, because many abandoned cities contain almost no evidence of massive final battles, no enormous graveyards, no single layer of destruction marking a definitive end. Instead, archaeologists found something far more unsettling: fragmentation. Different cities collapsed differently. Some faded gradually over decades. Others appear to have emptied rapidly. Some populations survived and reorganized elsewhere. Others vanished almost completely from the historical landscape. And then modern technology uncovered discoveries that changed the mystery entirely. Using airborne laser scanning technology capable of penetrating dense jungle canopies, researchers revealed enormous hidden networks beneath the forests of Central America. Vast highways connected major cities. Defensive systems stretched across entire regions. Terraces, reservoirs, fortifications, and urban centers appeared in places previously believed uninhabited. The scale was staggering. The Maya world had been far larger, more interconnected, and more vulnerable than historians once imagined. That realization transformed the mystery. Because collapsing isolated cities is one thing. Watching an entire interconnected civilization begin failing simultaneously is something far more dangerous. Then come the clues historians still debate fiercely today: evidence of severe drought, deforestation, political instability, nutritional decline, religious upheaval, social fragmentation. Each clue feels convincing on its own, yet none fully explain the complete collapse. And perhaps the most haunting discovery of all is this: the Maya were not ignorant of danger. They were intelligent enough to observe environmental change, advanced enough to understand cycles, patterns, and survival systems, sophisticated enough to adapt repeatedly throughout centuries of conflict and instability. Yet despite all of that knowledge, something still overwhelmed them. Something powerful enough to reduce magnificent cities into ruins swallowed by the jungle. And the theories explaining what truly happened become even darker from here. The theories that change everything. The deeper historians investigate the collapse of the Maya civilization, the more uncomfortable the truth becomes. There is no single explanation. No final discovery solved the mystery. No hidden inscription revealed what happened during the civilization's final years. Instead, the evidence points towards something far more terrifying: the possibility that the Maya were destroyed not by one catastrophe, but by multiple disasters feeding each other until the entire system began tearing itself apart. And that possibility changes everything. The first theory sounds almost reasonable: drought. Scientific studies of ancient lake sediments reveal periods of extreme climate instability during the Maya collapse. Rainfall appears to have decreased dramatically across parts of the region for extended periods. For a civilization dependent on complex water management systems and agricultural stability, prolonged drought would have been catastrophic. Reservoirs dry up, harvests fail, starvation spreads, cities become unstable. At first glance, it feels like the answer, until another question emerges. If drought alone destroyed the Maya, why did some cities survive longer than others? Why did some regions collapse violently while others faded gradually? Climate explains part of the mystery, not all of it. Then comes the second theory: war. Toward the final centuries of Maya power, evidence of conflict intensified dramatically. Defensive fortifications appeared around cities that once relied more heavily on political influence than military protection. Inscriptions describe battles becoming increasingly brutal. Rival kingdoms fought for territory, resources, trade dominance, and survival itself. And history has shown repeatedly that civilizations under environmental pressure often become more violent internally. But again, the explanation feels incomplete. Wars usually leave clear winners. The Maya collapse left ruins. Then historians began examining the economic structure of the civilization itself. That is where the theory becomes deeply unsettling. The Maya world may have become too complex to sustain. Massive cities required enormous amounts of labor, food, water, trade coordination, political stability, and religious legitimacy. Kings demanded monumental construction projects while populations continued expanding. Forests were cleared aggressively to support agriculture and urban growth. Resources became harder to maintain. The very success of Maya civilization may have slowly transformed its greatest strengths into fatal vulnerabilities. The system became fragile, and fragile systems collapse hard. But some researchers believe the true danger emerged somewhere even darker: the collapse of belief itself. Maya rulers justified their power through divine authority. They claimed spiritual control over cosmic balance, agriculture, weather, and prosperity. But what happens when drought continues despite ceremonies? What happens when famine spreads while kings still promise divine protection? Faith begins to crack. And when belief collapses inside a civilization built upon sacred legitimacy, political order can collapse with it. Some historians suspect entire populations may have lost confidence in their rulers, priests, and institutions simultaneously. Religious panic could have accelerated migration, rebellion, fragmentation, and social breakdown faster than armies ever could. Yet there is another theory few people discuss openly, one that makes the mystery even more disturbing. What if the Maya collapse was not unusual at all? What if highly advanced civilizations naturally move towards self-destruction when complexity outpaces sustainability? That possibility changes the Maya story from an ancient mystery into a universal warning, because the patterns sound painfully familiar. Environmental stress, political division, resource depletion, information systems losing trust, overextended infrastructure, social fragmentation. Civilizations often appear strongest shortly before they begin failing. And perhaps that is why the Maya mystery continues haunting the modern world centuries later. Not because they vanished, but because their collapse looks frighteningly human. Even now, researchers continue uncovering new ruins hidden beneath the jungle, revealing just how vast and interconnected their civilization truly was before the silence came. Every discovery raises more questions than answers, because somewhere inside the collapse of the Maya world may exist a terrifying possibility humanity still refuses to confront. Maybe civilizations do not die suddenly. Maybe they convince themselves they are eternal right until the moment they begin disappearing. What modern civilization refuses to notice? The ruins of the Maya are not frightening because they are ancient. They are frightening because they feel familiar. That is the part most people try not to think about while standing before abandoned pyramids swallowed by jungle vines. We look at collapsed civilizations as though they belong to a completely different species of humanity. We imagine their downfall as something distant, primitive, disconnected from the modern world. But the Maya believed their civilization would endure too. So did the Romans. So did every empire that ever collapsed. And that is what history keeps trying to teach us. Civilizations rarely recognize their own fragility while they are still powerful. At the height of Maya influence, their cities appeared unstoppable. Their rulers commanded enormous populations. Their trade systems stretched across vast territories. Their scientific knowledge exceeded what many societies of their era could even imagine. Their monuments projected permanence. Their elites believed the structure surrounding them would continue functioning because it always had. Then the systems supporting that world began failing faster than their leaders could respond. Sound familiar? Today, modern civilization depends on interconnected networks so complex that most people never even think about them. Food distribution systems, electrical grids, global trade routes, digital communication, water infrastructure, financial systems, satellites orbiting above the Earth. Entire societies now rely on fragile chains of coordination operating constantly beneath everyday life. And like the Maya, most people assume those systems will always exist, until they don't. The terrifying reality hidden inside history is that collapse often looks impossible right before it begins. The Maya did not wake up one morning and announce the end of their civilization. Their cities still functioned while pressure accumulated beneath the surface. Leaders continued projecting confidence. Rituals continued. Construction projects continued. Political rivalries continued. Ordinary people kept living their lives believing stability would return eventually. Then the strain became too great. Modern civilization faces pressures that feel disturbingly similar. Environmental instability grows more severe across the planet. Water shortages threaten major regions. Political polarization deepens between populations increasingly unable to trust one another. Economies expand while inequality intensifies. Technology connects humanity globally while simultaneously making entire systems more vulnerable to disruption. And perhaps the most dangerous similarity is psychological. Overconfidence. The belief that advanced societies are too sophisticated to collapse. The Maya probably believed their knowledge, architecture, religion, military power, and political systems made them secure. After all, civilizations capable of mapping celestial movements and constructing monumental cities in hostile environments are not supposed to disappear. Yet they did. Because intelligence alone does not guarantee survival. Sometimes complexity becomes weakness. The larger and more interconnected a civilization becomes, the harder it is to stop collapse once critical systems begin failing simultaneously. A drought becomes political instability. Political instability becomes conflict. Conflict disrupts trade. Economic stress increases social panic. Institutions lose credibility. Fear spreads faster than solutions. And eventually civilizations begin consuming themselves from within. That possibility is what transforms the Maya collapse from a historical mystery into something deeply personal for the modern world. Because the ruins hidden beneath the jungles of Central America are not simply monuments to the past. They may be reflections of the future. Even now, countless ancient cities remain buried beneath dense forests, still waiting to be uncovered. Entire histories vanished so completely that humanity forgot they existed for centuries. One day, future civilizations may look at the ruins of our world the same way we look at the Maya today, trying to understand how something so advanced disappeared, trying to explain why the warnings were ignored, trying to understand how powerful societies convince themselves they are permanent while standing at the edge of collapse. And the most terrifying possibility of all may not be what happened to the Maya. It may be what their story reveals about us. The most terrifying possibility. In the end, the greatest mystery surrounding the Maya may not be how they disappeared. It may be how completely the world forgot them afterward. Think about that for a moment. One of the most advanced civilizations on Earth built enormous cities, mastered astronomy, created complex systems of writing and mathematics, ruled vast territories, and shaped entire regions for centuries. Millions of people lived beneath the authority of Maya kings. Their temples dominated the horizon. Their rituals connected humanity to the cosmos itself. Then the silence came, and eventually, the jungle erased almost everything. Trees swallowed pyramids whole, roots crushed palace walls, rain washed away names once feared across kingdoms. Generations passed, empires rose and fell elsewhere across the planet. Entire continents changed, and hidden beneath dense forests, The remnants of the Maya world waited in darkness while humanity moved on without them. That may be the most disturbing truth history reveals. Civilizations are not immortal, no matter how powerful they appear, no matter how advanced they become, no matter how permanent their leaders believe them to be. Every empire eventually reaches the moment where it assumes collapse is impossible. That assumption becomes dangerous because it blinds societies to the warning signs growing around them. Systems weaken slowly, trust erodes quietly, environmental pressure intensifies gradually. Political instability spreads invisibly at first. Then one day, future generations look backward asking how nobody saw it coming. The Maya may have asked themselves the same question during their final years. And perhaps the most haunting part of this mystery is that we still do not know exactly what destroyed them. After centuries of excavation, research, technological advances, and scientific analysis, the answer remains incomplete. Every discovery solves one question while creating three more. The ruins still hold secrets buried beneath collapsed temples and jungle soil. That uncertainty gives the story its power. Because mysteries survive longer than certainty. The Maya collapse forces humanity to confront something deeply uncomfortable. Intelligence does not guarantee survival. Scientific advancement does not make civilizations invulnerable. Monumental architecture does not stop societies from disappearing. Human beings repeatedly build systems that appear eternal right before those systems begin breaking apart. And history rarely announces the exact moment the collapse begins. Sometimes the end arrives quietly. A delayed harvest, political division, resource exhaustion, loss of trust, fear spreading beneath the surface while public life continues pretending everything is stable. Then eventually, the silence comes. Today, tourists stand before Maya pyramids, rising from the jungle, and feel awe at what these people accomplished. But beneath that awe exists another emotion harder to describe, something colder, a realization lingering behind the beauty of the ruins. If a civilization this extraordinary could vanish, what makes us believe ours cannot? That question is why the Maya continue haunting the modern imagination centuries later, not because they disappeared, but because their story feels unfinished. Somewhere beneath those ancient forests, hidden chambers still remain undiscovered. Lost cities still sleep beneath the trees. Buried inscriptions may still hold fragments of the truth historians have spent generations searching for. And perhaps one day, humanity will finally uncover the answer to what happened. Or perhaps the real lesson was never hidden in the ruins at all. Perhaps the Maya left behind something far more important than an explanation, a warning. And somewhere beneath the silence of those abandoned cities, the Earth still remembers the civilization that believed it would last forever.